once heard from a teacher that getting the grasp of something that looks basic can often be more complicated than getting the grasp of something that looks more complex. And it's pretty easy to assume that that's very applicable to emotions and feelings, which by the by there's a line drawn between these two, who'd have thought. Of course, they have been mapped with different scales, graphics and other ways, and not a simple process. But from the naked eye, they're very postulate. We kind of just feel them. And it's pretty much impossible to accurately convey with words whatever's going on inside a little Gulliver to someone else. With all that said, for some this may be a blessing, for some this may be a curse, but we have this intrinsic craving for sharing these thoughts with other people, and human beings are just too intelligent to just not find a workaround. We usually tend to create a comparison bridge between whatever we're thinking to something that the other person may already know, and hope that we can kind of get the point across with that. And I'm gonna tell you, I've seen some people on the internet that are so good at this that I'm sure that if they wanted to, they'd be able to pick up the entire Immanuel Kant bibliography and explain his whole ideas by comparing them with the very act of spreading on video camera. It would logically get the point across, you would learn something new, you would be enlightened. And on top of it all, you'd even crack a few laughs whilst you're on it. Of course, in this topic, the sky is not the limit, and something as packed with emotions, feelings, maths, and even having its own dedicated cognition as music does, wouldn't be off the topic. You can probably agree that sometimes it's easier to explain a feeling with a song, and sometimes a song may make you feel an array of emotions that you can't really put into words. You can only feel them. Sometimes a song gets strongly connected to a game, a book, a place, or any kind of memory of yours, and sometimes, depending on how strong that bond may be, that very song plays over and over and over and gets stuck in the old Gulliver whenever you have the slightest trace of thought about what it is bonded to. The reason I've been blabbering about this, which is also the same reason why I've been covering Hendrix songs in the background until now, is because about a little over a year ago now, I ran across a banger of a manga series named Shiori Experience, which I have a lot to talk about, but what made me want to write a video about this is that when I found it, it brought back to my mind the song Little Busters from The Pillars. Now, I absolutely love The Pillars. They're one of my favorite J-rock bands of all time. But the thing here is that the band doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Shiori Experience, other than, I guess, Japanese bands expressing to the world how they roll the stones. But that very line of thought branched out to many different lines of thoughts, whilst I pondered about how exactly did my brain connect specifically the song Little Busters to Shiori Experience. So with this, I want to take you in a little ride in the fields of my mind, trying to figure out this connection as we talk about manga, about music, and about the bygone days. I don't intend to linger for too long on the manga itself in this video, but I still want to give you a quick rundown of what this masterpiece is about so we can be on the same page. And also, I really want this manga to be more and more popular, so I want to share this experience. The full title of the manga is Shiori Experience, 地味な私と変なおじさん. Jimmy Ham! We're following the story of Shiori Honda, a 26-year-old English teacher who used to be a passionate guitar player in high school, but eventually decided to stop playing and give up her ambitions after her older brother, who introduced her to the world of music and was her biggest inspiration, got their family in a millionaire debt after being scammed and skedaddling right after, leaving the debt to their family to pay. At her 27th birthday, she got a kind of a crossroads pact signed for her, which was I guess a curse that gets you bonded to a member of the 27 club as you'd get bonded to a JoJo stand. So she gets bonded to the spirit of Jimi Hendrix, who's capable of interacting with her and to possess her body by jacking into her nape. She learns from Hendrix that now she's under a curse, where she has to become a rock legend still by the age of 27. Otherwise she'll die. That's pretty much the premise of the manga. So you have these different characters who have Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, and Brian Jones acting almost like JoJo stands. It's super cool. I'm not gonna say anything further than this, but I do want to say that this manga is beautiful in many ways. Not only the drawn art is incredible, of course, but I think you can feel how passionate the authors are about their project. And as Hendrix is a very important piece in this story, I feel like they took into heart what is, in my opinion, the most important lesson Hendrix left to the world, the very concept of the electric church music. Which is interesting because I briefly talked about this in my video about the film In This Corner of the World, in a tangent I made about Telly Hall. But what I'm talking about here is the idea of still taking productions of yesteryear as inspiration, but not being stuck in the past. You're not trying to replicate them, you're trying to create your own thing. The genre doesn't matter, the labels don't matter. You're always brewing new ideas and experimenting with different things, welcoming new perspectives, expressing yourself, creating new sounds nobody has ever heard before. And this story and these characters aren't stuck in the past, they're always taking their inspirations to create new things. Although Shiori could allow Hendrix to just possess her and play in her stead at the vibes of the 1969 Woodstock, although her life is on the line, she doesn't want to be Hendrix. She wants to be herself and express her own ideas. She wants to feel the blues, because she is a character who's bold as love. I think the most appropriate way to start this little journey is by taking a look at what, in my opinion, is the most interesting part of the process of music composition. I really don't want to sound pretentious, but we all know that our little minds love to learn by catching patterns and connecting the dots, and what we know, or at least most of what we know of music theory today, is like a mapping of the patterns of sounds that over thousands of years we notice that feel pleasant, or that at the very least have somewhat of a meaning to our ears. There's an interesting video on the Wired channel. It's one of those experts answers questions from Twitter kind of video, where Tim Henson from Polyphia says something along the lines of you not needing to know music theory to write a song. If you have a melody in your head, you have music right there. I think this is such an interesting perspective, and I completely agree with it. However, I'd like to add my perspective and what I understand and interpret of this topic. I think you don't necessarily need to know music theory to write a song, but you have to understand it, or as corny as it may sound, you have to feel it. Whenever you're writing a piece, you're taking many of the inspirations and patterns you gathered over your time and manipulating them to create your own thing. And for the most part, this process doesn't happen, at least fully consciously. That piece of music you wrote is unique, it's yours, but it has got to have come from somewhere, even if you don't realize it. But ultimately, it is yours. It's your interpretation of the world through the vast pond of musical perspectives you have stored in your mind. Of course, this is not only limited to music composition, but kind of similar to that thought experiment of how many handshakes a person is away from another. A song can remind you of another song, which in turn reminds you of another song, and just keeps going on this chain. Whether it's because these songs share a similar chord progression, or a similar type of chord progression, similar scales, or even because a specific timbre makes you feel in a similar way that another song makes you feel, it can be pretty hard to pinpoint where the relation comes from, and like most people, I have experiences like that all the time. In fact, as we're trying to find what intonation happened that made my mind connect little buses to Shiori Experience, there was one specific little trip I went on that might serve as some sort of clue, which was a time in which I was listening to this Hendrix song called Dolly Dagger with guitar in hands and trying to play along, and as I was on it, something in it reminded me of another song, and that ended up snowballing, and I just kept on playing the songs that would come to mind until I ultimately landed on an Asian Kung Fu Generation song called Yanagi Komichi, or Demachi Yanagi Parallel Universe. The process went kind of like this. So there's Dolly Dagger, that sounds kind of like this. My main point starts from this part. I remember that when I was trying to learn this song, in the point in which I was trying to figure out how to make this sound, you know, it was quite simple because it just sounds familiar. It just sounds like the first triad for the Red House, also from Hendrix. Anyway, as it just sounded familiar, I kind of just felt like going for it again.
At that time. See, I just some Roadhouse. Roadhouse? I mean Red House. And so from the Red House, as I had this little phrase in my mind, and the previous dolly that I got went all the way up here, I had this phrase stuck in my mind for a second. And I started questioning myself, where does that come from? Because I've heard this before. I'm pretty sure I've heard this before, right? Isn't this that one thing? But back when I was on that little trip, I actually did this last bit with simple power chords going down the fretboard, like this. Which reminded me of this.
This is kind of the beauty of it all. Even better than this mess of an example that I just gave. Do yourself a favor and take a listen to Europa, Earth's Cry, Heaven's Smile by Carlos Santana, released in 1976. Then take a listen to Tender Surrender by Steve Vai, released in 1995. And then take a listen to Villanova Junction, which was written by Hendrix and first recorded in 1969. The similarities are clear as day, but they all sound like specially unique, beautiful pieces of music on their own. And all of these songs are years apart from each other. And as far as I'm concerned, none of these artists were actively thinking of each other's song during the writing process. They're just their own unique creations. So if we follow the perspective that music is a force of nature, then this is a prime example of how in nature, nothing is lost, nothing is created, everything is transformed. There's still a problem with this reasoning though. We reached on Asian Kung Fu Generation, not the Pillars, and you could also argue that we're talking about a manga, so there's no specific audio to go off of, but I don't think that in and of itself is a problem, and I think it's fair to see all of this as a step forward into this little adventure and to take J-Rock as a checkpoint so that we can talk about different generations and about the past. Legends say that the vaporwave aesthetic started to get very well popularized on the internet around 2010 up to 2015, mostly by the generation that, from what I understand, pretty much dominated the internet at that time, the millennials, the people who were being born in the 80s or were yet to be born throughout the 90s. It's supposed to evoke an extremely soothing, nostalgic feeling, yearning towards better days when everything was simple, straightforward, and peaceful in a way, bringing back styles of the internet's early days all the way back to even the late 70s. Obviously not necessarily because those times were simple and calm, but mostly because these people were either too young to be sufficiently aware of what was going on around them, or they were still about to be born in the following years. This is interesting to me because this description fits very well the way that I feel towards the mid to early 2010s, all the way back to the late 90s, which is a time I wasn't even born yet. There's There's something in common about shows like Shiori Experience, Lane from 1998, Fully Cooley from 2000, or Samurai Champloo from 2004, although they don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. You see, I wasn't even in my father's left nut in 1998, nor in 2000, and throughout the entirety of 2004, I was an illiterate little blob of a human being whose biggest life achievement was getting through the process of gradually going from crawling underground to taking my first couple steps. So suffice to say, I've actually watched all of the aforementioned shows after the 2020s, yet they still managed to touch on this soothing feeling of a time that the only memories I have are flashing at best, if existing at all. And I believe that J-Rock has a lot to do with this. By the way, Fully Cooley is the only show out of the examples I gave where J-Rock plays any role at all, but that's fine, since the show is the best clue we have so far, for obvious reasons. That being said, of course it depends on many factors, but generally speaking, J-Rock is a genre that makes me feel electric and alive in a strangely calm way. For a small period of time, it's almost as if it had the power to make me feel like my problems don't really have to be a big deal, that I'm safe and that, I don't know, things are cool and I have all the time in the world to do whatever I want. Maybe that's because of the way that I was exposed to J-Rock for the first time. It wasn't between Cartoon Network or even SBT or TV Globinho streaming narrator with that Haruka Kanata opening from Ajikan. This TV channel called Play TV that started streaming Bleach and Death Note in 2014 during late afternoon. Something about maybe the slightly lower visual and audio quality has a pointed grey and cold and strangely embracing and soothing feeling with that orange and green color palette in the horizon. I remember coming back from school with my older brother and my dad and smelling my mom's cooking, sitting in front of the TV with my brother, creating stories together with the toys, the Beyblade battles, Bakugan, and the little Percival toy I had when I was 9 and used to say was my best friend, Chaves o El Chavo del Ocho as our Hispanic brothers and sisters call, which is a Mexican sitcom from the 70s that somehow crossed many generations into the future all across Latin America. The times in which my mom made some coxinhas and we would all walk to the park with our dog, who unfortunately passed away in 2021. He was a special boy, being part of the family since 2008, and our other dog, who was part of the family since 2010. We grew up with them. The amount of special memories our family shares with them. The day they had to go was hard. You may rest in peace, boy and girl. These desks and these TVs, which I swear to this day that the one we had smelled of hard and spoiled bread when turned on. The PlayStation 2, things that were arguably late for the generation, but it's what we had. The obsession I had with Ben 10, Sonic, and I'm not a boy anymore. Today I'm a responsible university man. The kids of our generation, kids born within the first decade of this century, are batch by batch becoming the adults now. Not only the world has changed, but we now see the world in a different manner. And it's our turn to start bearing the responsibility of taking humankind into the next steps. But above all, please take care of your family, whoever you consider them to be. And I don't know, for me, Fully Cooley and the role of the pillars on the show are kind of a culmination of everything I just said. Also being about growing up and these struggles to understand and to learn what does it mean to be a responsible adult, and ultimately being immature at times. And for some reason, which could potentially become an investigation of its own, whenever I think of Fully Cooley, chances are that the first song that's gonna pop into mind is Little Busters. And this just might be a huge step forward into the adventure. We've reached Little Busters, and I know that one of the easiest ways to make the song pop into my mind is by referencing Fully Cooley in some way. So maybe the next step could be trying to find out if maybe my mind somehow connected Fully Cooley to Shiori Experience, and that should be simple enough. You can probably tell that I'm no exceptional guitarist by any means. I've been playing around with it for roughly a little over 2 years now. I can pretty much just dabble with it, but I'm very enthusiastic about it. And it's very easy to get my attention by showing me guitars. I think they're beautiful and, I guess, mechanically interesting instruments. There's a particular charm about them, and I swear I don't intend to express any kind of exceptionalism with this, but there is an extra neural activation when I see a left-handed one. And maybe that's it. I found Shiori Experience by randomly stumbling across a picture of Shiori holding a Stratocaster upside down, just like my hero. I immediately thought it looked cool, and I did a little research to see what it was all about. And the closest reference I have of a manga/anime character playing a left-handed instrument is Haruko from Fully Cooley with a blue Rickenbacker bass. So maybe that's where the strings intertwine? Is this a concrete conclusion? No, I don't think so. I can't tell, at the very least. But I'm satisfied with the mind journey I went through and the memories it was able to touch, and I can only hope I was able to portray it all in an understandable way in this video. We're done. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving this little project a try. And also, it's already been about 10 months now, but I really want to thank the people who went out of their way to comment and to interact with the video I posted about the film This Corner of the World. I know I said something similar to this last time, but I really was caught off guard, but thank you for that. Thank you for the words of encouragement. Something else is that it's already gonna be late news by now, but about 2 weeks ago of me recording this, the members of the Pillars announced their disbanding, and I'm sure the boys have their reasons, so the least we can do, I think, is thank them for 35 long, beautiful years of history. They have certainly left their mark on the world and inspired so many people across the globe. By the way, a little unrelated to it all, but originally the script for this video was a little longer than this. I had some other stories that I wanted to tell, but I trimmed a lot of content out of this because some of these stories were a little too personal and some of them I just couldn't find a way to fit into the narrative of the video, so I felt like I just had to cut them. But I don't know, they might come up in future videos. Certainly not gonna be anytime soon, but I definitely want to see about that. But yeah, thanks again, stay safe, bye.